thank you very much. I am very honored to, first of all, to speak to such an illustrious group of people, but also when I've been told who else used to speak, has spoken at this area, even more honored. But let me say that I want to talk to you about weather today. I'm a weather guy by background and understanding. This report, although I'm speaking of it, was prepared by a team of people with the Institute for Catastrophic Loss Reduction. Paul Kovacs, one of the team members, is over there, and others, and I've worked with many scientists around the world. This is not something that is just one person can assimilate, but we have tried to bring together in a way that is concise, collectively, scientifically credible, the information. So let me proceed right away and start, first of all, as Gregor said, and thank you for his introduction. Weather has had big impacts on Canada. The Montreal ice storm of 1998 caused over 30 deaths, $1.9 billion in insured losses, probably $5+ billion in socioeconomic, and months of impact. The Slave Lake Fire, $700 million insured losses. There was fires in Kelowna area, British Columbia, a few years ago, $227 million. These are the insured losses, because we can easily document them. The social costs, the economic cost to society add many millions beyond these. The biggest event here in Ontario, a $625 million insured losses when Finch Avenue Road went out due to the rain event in August 2005. But most of that damage was flooding down rivers in through the sewer systems into the basement of yours, perhaps, and many other homes in the Toronto area. We had events of similar type in Calgary, 2010, 2009, one here in Ontario in 2009 as well, and a Calgary hail event at over $400 million way back in 1991. These are huge economic impacts, and with them social impacts. Flooding is a big issue. Ontario as well, but here the big events, Alberta, Saguenay flood, Winnipeg repeatedly. Tornadoes. Usually the costs are not quite so large, but the dramatic impact on societies. The Goderich tornado of just last year, the Vaughan tornadoes of 2009, the biggest tornado in terms of economic effects was in Edmonton back in 1987, but we've had tornadoes in many parts of Canada. And the unthinkable, only last Friday, if you were wandering through Union Station, you'd be up to your knees or wherever in water. Well, I happened to be in Montreal at the same time, and we were wandering, well, I wasn't, because the hotel I was in actually locked its doors so the water could not get in. So people who were unfortunately went out for a break couldn't get back into the meetings. But we are seeing these events happening regularly around our country. And around the world, as defined by Munich Reinsurance, they have tabulated since the 1980s these what they call great and devastating global disasters. And if you look at them, the number of earthquakes and volcanoes is sort of flat. There's a number of them every year. They're continuing. They have tremendous and unfortunately devastating impacts. But the number of climate-related ones is going up. Floods, storms, and droughts. And these things are affecting societies around the world. We can say, as climate is the statistics of weather and the climate is changing. We can look back over the last 150 years at the simplest parameter, the average temperature of the globe, and it's been going up. And as we go further in time forward and say the last 50 years, the warming rate has been about 0.13 degrees C per decade. But if we look at the last 25 years, we're up to 0.18 degrees C per decade. The warming rate is escalating, and the result of this, as concluded by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change in its 2007 global assessment, was that the warming of the climate system is unequivocal. This is looking at temperature changes at the surface, temperature changes through the atmosphere. It is warming from the surface right up to the tropopause. We are seeing the loss of sea ice, we're seeing the loss of land ice, we're seeing the oceans warm. All of these factors working together led to the conclusion that we are indeed warming. There is no doubt about it. And just so to bring you up to date, the World Meteorological Organization, in its 2011 report, they haven't come up with the 2012 one yet, they ranked 2010 as the warmest year on record. So we're continuing warming even past the IPCC 2007 report. So what does this mean? This warming, we can show, is due to the increased concentrations of greenhouse gases. We know how they are going to project at least for the next 30, 40, 50 years. So let's look out ahead and say, what is the projected warming for the years to come? So we can go back, and this is going back in time. First of all, we had that warming, I said, 0.13 degrees C per decade, 0.18 degrees C per decade. And now let's project ahead from the year 2000, say, to 2050. The best estimate is we'll continue to warm at a rate at least equal to, and in round numbers, 0.2 degrees C per decade, and probably more. Unfortunately, greenhouse gas emissions are going up. They're going up twice as fast this decade than they were, the decade of 2000 to 2010 than they were in the 1990s. And so, if anything, we'll be warming faster. So let's say at least 0.2, and that's what we built into this story. We're looking at a relatively conservative projection ahead of what we've seen in the recent past. We could, as we say, there's scientific uncertainty on this. We don't know. We know it's not going to be zero, but it could be much warmer. It could be a little bit less. The result is if you take the slip up and say, okay, let's go along the upper limit, that future growth, we could be looking at 3 to 5 degrees Celsius warming by the end of the century. That's 3 to 5 degrees warming in 100 years. So what does that mean in perspective? Well, let's go back in time. This is the last 400,000 years on the planet. We know there are warm periods and there are cold periods, ice ages as we call them. The last ice age ended about 20,000 years ago. And about 10,000 years ago, we went into what is basically the warm period that we are still in. These are purely natural phenomena. Humans had no role in this. I could explain it, but we need a beer and a half an hour of time to do that. The point we want to come out of this is, if we look at global temperature and arbitrarily define the present as 0, is that the warmest we've seen in 400,000 years is maybe a degree Celsius, warmer than present. And we know that during an ice age, when most of what is now Canada was covered with 1, 2, or 3 kilometers of ice, the global temperature was actually only 5, 6, 7 degrees Celsius colder than present. And as I said, we warmed from the last ice age approximately 5 to 7 degrees Celsius over 10,000 years. That's a rate of warming. And we can say that the projected warming over the next 100 years is about 2 to 4 degrees, somewhere there, possibly 5 degrees Celsius in the next 100 years. The point is, the rate of warming is at least 50, could even be 100 times faster than it was ever naturally on this time scale in our planet. It's rates of warming we're concerned about in this sense. So what does this mean to us? It means, as we look in a place in Canada, and we're focusing here on Canada today, we will have much warmer winters. The winters will be particularly much warmer in Canada than they average around the globe. Canada will warm probably about twice as fast as as the global average, because the oceans are warming slower. Russia, Northern Europe, will warm at the same rate as us. We're not being selected out, but it's because of our latitude and that we're a landmass. 4.5 degrees Celsius in the higher regions, 3.5 degrees Celsius where we are now by 2050. Summer's not warming as much, but almost 3.5 degrees Celsius in our part of Canada, in the south, and almost no warming in the north because of the role of the loss of sea ice and other things. Equally important, though, is the change in precipitation. We will see in the wintertime 30% typically over Canada, much more precipitation. It will be more rain than snow, but we'll see a lot more rain. In the summertime, in southern Canada, less than 10% change. slight increase or no change. What is of concern, though, is that out west, the Okanagan regions of British Columbia, southern Alberta will actually see a much reduced amount of precipitation, and with much hotter temperatures, which are forecast for there, we were really concerned about drought. Where will the water come so that that nice wine bottle you give out at the next prize will have to come from somewhere other than the Okanagan? Okay, another thing is snow. We're going to have more warm winters, more rain, but less snow. So that in many parts of Canada, as you can see with that darkish red color, those areas will have basically loss of 100%, in other words, almost no snow in March. They'll have snow in the middle of the winter. The winter will be shorter. It will melt earlier. So if you're planning your ski vacations for March 2050, I suggest you move them to January. So we have to be concerned about these things. What we're really concerned about, though, is also things like winds. Daily average winds across Canada, which already wipe out buildings, as in this construction site. And we'll see right across the country increases by 10% or more in average wind speed conditions. Off the east coast of Atlantic Canada, we will see increased frequency of heavy, let's say heavy hurricane conditions. There won't necessarily be more hurricanes, but the hurricanes that happen will be of more intense precipitation and an average higher wind speed. So that's a concern in Atlantic Canada. Sea level is another issue of concern. The sea level is rising, and it is rising, in fact, faster than we in the scientific community thought it would, as we're now looking ahead. The British Columbia government has been looking into this, and they're now projecting that for the next 20 to 50 years, we should be planning on a ½ meter of sea level rise. By the end of the century, more than 1 meter of sea level rise. And if you're in a coastal area, or if you live on Prince Edward Island, 1 meter of sea level rise gets pretty close to making it Prince Edward Islands, plural. So we need to be worried about these things. The Vancouver International Airport is basically actually already at sea level. And but what we want to focus on today is the extremes. We tend to think in an absolute sense. We think about 30 degrees Celsius as a hot day. We think of winds of a certain number of kilometers per hour, or a certain rainfall rate of so many millimeters per hour in an absolute sense. If we shift the means, we necessarily shift the frequency of occurrence of those extremum events. For example, in this diagram here, if you have an event that occurred once every 40 years, and you just shift the mean by 1 degree, that event now starts to occurring once every 6 years. And so what we're going to be talking about now is the shifting of these statistics of extreme events. And we'll first of all talk about temperature. This is a pretty complicated diagram, but this is out of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. But what they say is it is virtually certain that increases in the frequency and magnitude of warm daily temperature extremes will occur, and also correspondingly decreases in cold extremes. Less cold days, but many more hot days. So focusing on the hot days, if we take the event that occurred once in 20 years, say over the last 20-year period, think of the one hottest day we had. That event, by 2050, will be occurring once every 3 years. So it's not once in 20, it's now once in 3 years for that hot day. That has effects on our human health. It has effects on our infrastructure, buckling of railway lines. Those nicely aligned rails may actually change with the heat. Other structures are affected by heat. But human health is an issue. Number of hot days, an example. I live in London, Ontario, so we'll focus on London, for example. But whereas we used to have, back in the 61 to 90 period, about 8 hot days per year, again defined as over 30 degrees Celsius, by 2020 to 2040, we'll be up to 22 those hot days. By the middle of the century, we'll be up to over 30. In other words, a month of hot days. It won't be a month in a row, but over that now extended summer period, approximately 4 or 5 times more hot days per summer. And by the end of the century, we'll be up to over 60 hot days per summer. This just depends on which of the emission scenarios we follow, but it's a typical number. Some of you may recall that in August 2003, there was a record-setting heat wave across Western Europe. The estimates are now that more than 70,000 people died prematurely in Western Europe, mostly in France, actually. The biggest number in France, 15,000 in France. Died due to a heat wave in August 2003. The estimates are that by mid-century, that record-setting heat wave will happen every second summer. We have to adapt to it, and the Europeans are working in that. Precipitation events, the kind of things that we had in Union Station Friday, in Finch Avenue Road in 2005 and things. The now once in 20-year event will become a once in every 10-year event. In other words, twice as often by 2050. So we need to be factoring these kind of things into our events, our planning of our infrastructure, the way in which we design our cities. Eastern Canada ice storm I mentioned earlier, 30 deaths, $5 billion plus in damages. That was due to ice, freezing rain. The projections is that in the Ottawa, Montreal, Quebec City area, we will have an increase in the number of freezing rain events of more than 4 hours duration by over 50%. And those events that occur, that last, where you get freezing rain for 6+ hours, will increase by maybe 80% by 2050. What happened in the case of the Montreal event, or the Eastern Canada event, was the freezing rain just basically downed all the power lines and had other impacts on structures, trees, as you can see in these pictures. Fires. We mentioned the Slave Lake fire. We have lots of wildfires in Canada, and unfortunately, the projections are, with the warmer conditions and the changing precipitation patterns, we will see many parts of Canada with not only increases, but increases over 50%, sometimes over 100% in the number of wildfires, and this is by 2030. This is a publication by a group of scientists on this issue. And they are both due to lightning and human. They've tried to model both factors, but in both cases, it is the warmer conditions make the vegetation more susceptible. When we get to things like tornadoes and hailstorms, it's harder for us as scientists, to be honest. We can't say for sure how they're going to change for several reasons. One is these kind of events are very small. We have not really good data sets on them. Our capacity to observe tornadoes is quite frankly changing with time, so we're not sure when we see a trend, is that due to just different observations or other things. Similarly, they're too small a scale to predict in a climate model, so we can't be confident of their predictions. But if you get more hot days, that's what usually triggers a tornado. So we kind of think that, yes, the risk is there. And we can also look at the United States, just south of us. They get lots more tornadoes than we do. And typically, the climate bands are, in a sense, moving northward as we warm the climate. So from a point of view of risk management, I think we have to assume, we have to, in good management sense, say, yes, the risks of more tornadoes is such that they will become more of an issue in the future than they have been in the past. But across Canada, these effects will be quite different, and I just wanted to end in a few minutes by referring to some of the changing extreme events that will impact Canada differently. For example, comparing the southernmost Canada, roughly where we are physically now, with the north, and comparing Alberta with Atlantic Canada. And looking at southernmost Canada, more hot days, a big issue for our health issues here. The Health Canada and other organizations are working into heat alert response systems. Environment Ontario is working on this, right? More heavy precipitation and flooding events. That's what we need to be planning for in southern Ontario. As we go to the north, we're seeing and hearing from the people of the north. I've been to Iqaluit several times and other villages in the north. The residents are reporting these kind of things. As the sea ice is melting, there are more storms, and in the old days that didn't matter because the ice protected the coastline. Now you've got the water there. The winds push the waves up, the sea level is rising, there is coastal erosion effects on the villages that are almost all coastal communities. Here's a group from a study done by the National Roundtable, but just quoting the one from Hull Beach in Nunavut. Weather extremes are likely to become more frequent and intense in the changing climate, and they note some of these issues of the damage they've seen to their infrastructure in these small villages of a few hundred people where the infrastructure and emergency prepared reparations are needed. We also think of the changes in other things like permafrost. Turns out that most of the transportation in the north is actually done on ice roads in the wintertime. And you get, in this case, the Tibet to Condueo, I can't pronounce that one, but anyway, the winter roads, which are typically open 70 days a year. The mining company for the Diavik diamond mines trucks in everything. You get a reduction in the length of that ice road period of time, and they now have to fly it in. So they were flying in, was it here, billions of dollars extra to fly in 13,000 tons of dry cargo and 11,000 tons of fuel that they would have in the past brought up by trucks with the long season. So Alberta, I mentioned this hot, dry session in the west. We expect to see the summers with more, though, hot conditions, heavy precipitation, the potential for tornadoes, like the tragic event of Pine Lake in 2000, and risk of flooding. On Atlantic Canada, with sea level rise, hurricanes with stronger winds. This is Hurricane Juan in September 2003, which went through and caused huge social and economic damages in Atlantic Canada. Those are the kind of things we worry about. And we're seeing the communities working together now. Dave McLeod from the City of Toronto, who's over there, was part of this group of 30 individuals representing several sectors in the transportation, telecommunications, energy, utilities, oil and gas sectors, municipalities, academia, consultants. Anyway, they brought together. This has happened only a matter of weeks ago. And their conclusions were, increasing frequency of extreme weather is a concern for many sectors. The sectors are understanding this. They need assistance from the government is required to develop regional plain language information on current and future probability of extreme weather. And this information is needed to conduct extreme weather risk assessments of what may be part of an organization's enterprise risk management and/or environmental and/or emergency management planning. In other words, we need to do these things. So the conclusion of all this is that Canadians and people around the world will need to adapt. When by formally we define adaptation as making adjustments in our decisions, what we choose to do and not do, activities and thinking. What do we do in our way because of the observed or expected changes in climate in order to moderate harm and take advantage of the new opportunities? If you're thinking ahead, it's all not bad. But the reality is that almost all economic studies show that the cost of no action is much more than the cost of the actions we need. We need to be taking action because the climate is changing, the trends are affecting Canadians already, the severe weather is projected to increase over the next 40 years, the climate will continue to change with varying impacts across Canada's regions, and private and public sector leaders need information about regional climate trends in order to adapt for the future. And Canadians and Canada must adapt to this new reality. Thank you all very much for your attention, and hopefully we'll all be working together in the decades to come to make, let's say, Canada and the world a better place for everyone. Thank you.